No, Tes Zayin base. Am I correct? No, Yud Zayin base. Yud Zayin base. Okay, I did call Gare in New York today. They don't have the new Luchos yet for Tav Shinun Tes. So, we don't, I don't, where? I don't know. Because they're bringing from Israel. No, they don't. They have another less than a month. I did ask the guy in New York who obviously does not do Daf Yomi Yerushalmi. I asked him whether Shkolim is part of the Yerushalmi cycle. And he says he thinks it is, which is good for us because in the Yerushalmi it's 30 blot. I checked it out.
22.
No, that's in the Bavli. In the Yerushalmi it's even longer.
Oh.
So it saves
You
us.
skip that and you jump ahead of them.
Right.
It's 30. Why is it less
In the Bavli, because there's less on a page in the Bavli.
Oh.
The Yerushalmi is there's more on a page and it's spaced more. So there's the same Gemara, the same text, but in the Yerushalmi it's more. Oh, so we gain a whole month that way. Okay, so halacha ches. I'm Rabbi Loi. Rabbi Loi said, Shamati mi Rabbi Lezer. I heard from Rabbi Lezer. Afilu he bebeis kur. Now, before we had said you cannot carry in a karpa if it's more than a beis sign. So Rabbi Loi says not true. You can carry even up to a beis kur, much more. V'chein shmadi mene also heard from Rabbi Lezer that anchi chotzer sheshogach echamem v'lo irev. If you have people in the chotzer, one of whom forgot to participate in the eruv, so he can be mavatel his rishus, right? Let's say, in other words, he renounces his rights. Let's say he renounces rights in the chotzer, in the courtyard, and not in his house. So then, Beiso also lahachnis v'lo milhotzi. Oh no, sorry. He renounces both his rights in the chotzer and his rights in his house. Nevertheless, Beiso also milachnis hotzi lo. He is forbidden to take into and carry out of his house. Avalahen mutar, but they're allowed. The rest of the people in the courtyard are allowed to carry in and out of his house. V'chein shamati mimenu. So I heard from him. Sheyotzim ba'ar kabnin bepesach. This type of vegetable called the ar kabnin. One could be yotzi, one tzchiv of moror with the ar kabnin. I checked this out by all students. To find somebody who was in agreement with him on this point. Below Matzasi, I did not find anybody of that ilk. Okay, now we're going to describe this in some greater detail. Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Lezer said, Ravosa named Rabbi Lezer, that which Rabbi Eloi said you can carry in a karpaf even if it's more than a base of time, it's not 100% accurate. First of all, the next word is a typo. It should be b'mislaketes. Oh, you're right. It is severe. Wow. It is impressive. Okay. B'mislaketes so sign be base kur he must nisin. Our Mishnah is talking about a case where not michalekes, but mislaketes. Now, this is a difficult concept. What exactly it means, all the Mefarshim have difficulty. What the Pnei Moshe says, and Lieberman agrees with him, or Chaim Kanievsky brings it as one shot, is that mislaketes means you have a base, you actually have a base sign. And it's in a base court. But there's sloping walls around the base sign. It's like a basin. Right? So really, he's not being matir to carry any more than the previous Mishnah. His previous Mishnah is matir base sign. He's also matir base sign. He just says if you have a base core, a large area which is enclosed, too large to carry it, but you can define a sub area within it where you can't carry because the base sign, so you can carry in that sub area. And one of those ways is mislaketus if the walls around it slope up. Okay? Also. So from him, as we said, that the people of Chutzner, for one of them, forgot and did not participate in the Eir. He was mevatel reshus, so he renounces his rights. His house is also for himself, but it's mutter for them. Tamon Rabbanon says over there it's the rabbis. Ramchach Rabbi Eliezer, but here it's Rabbi Eliezer. Now, what do we mean by that? I'll tell you, says the Gemara. Rabbanon Amri, Adam Mevata Rishus. Now here everything is backwards. Adam Mevata Rishus Chatzero. So it's Beisa, which should be Chatzero. Every time in the next couple lines you say Chatzero and Beisa, reverse the words. Adam Mevata Rishus Chatzero. Ve'ein Adam Mevata Rishus Beisa. Rabbanon hold, when a person renounces his rights, he renounces his rights in the Chotzer. And therefore everybody can carry in the Chotzer. but nobody can carry into his house because he doesn't renounce his house. He retains the right to his house. He renounces the rights to his courtyard. Okay. Rabbi Elazar mekashem shalom mevatel rishus chatzero kach mevatel rishus beiso. Just like a person renounces his rights in his chatzer, so too renounces the rights in his house, and therefore they can carry even into his house. They don't just have to stop at his doorstep; they can carry into his house mamish. Okay. So that Al Dait now. The question is, if that's the case. Al Dait Rabbi Elazar, according to Rabbi Elazar, Yeoseh Achsanyo. Let him become like a guest. Achsanyo as a host or a guest. Let him become like a guest. In other words, he should be allowed to carry in and out of his own house. He doesn't own it anymore. Who owns it now? Since he renounced the rights to it, belongs to everybody else. So he's no worse than any other guest of the other people on Shabbos. Just like if I'm a guest in your house, I can carry. So too, let him carry because he's the guest of the other people who live in the courtyard. Right? Says Umar, technically you're right. Masnitz Rabbi Chia Barada b'shem Rabbi Shem Logi said, nonetheless, Knas comes to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar find him. Said, since you didn't do what you were supposed to do from before Shabbos, when you renounce your rights on Shabbos, we find you in that you're not allowed to carry. Okay, you lose your rights to carry. It's true, technically speaking, you should be permitted. This, by the way, we paskin like he is permitted. We paskin like Rabbanan with that there is no such Knas. Once he's mevat Rishusa, once he renounces his ownership, he can carry. But Rabbi Elazar holds we find him because he didn't do it properly for Shabbos. Rav Simi the boy. Rav Simi asked a general question which Gemara is not going to answer. Davar midivrayim. Is this true by any Rabbanan? Kaitzela b'shogeg Rabbi Elazar. Do we find him b'shogeg like Rabbi Elazar says here? In other words, here Rabbi Elazar didn't distinguish whether the person intentionally didn't do the right thing or unintentionally. He finds him for not having done the right thing. Is that a universal application, universally applied? Anywhere where there's a Issa D'Rabbanan, does Rabbi Elazar say that we find the guy for not having done the right thing or not? And the Gemara, of course, does not answer that question. Rabbi Bob Braid Rapapi Boy, he stated the following. This is actually Boy as a statement. If the guy said, I'm Rishus Beisi. If a guy said, I'm renouncing even my rights in my house. Up Rabbanan Moedi. Rabbanan also can see. He renounced the rights to his house. He did it explicitly. And the next word should be Omar. Omar Reini Avato Rishus. Say, what if he explicitly limited himself? It said, I'm only being Mavato, renouncing my rights in my chotzer, my courtyard, not in my house. Or for Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Elazar concedes in that case as well. No, it's Machlos Rabban Rabbi Elazar is what a default case is, a generic case. He said, I'm Mavato my Rishus. So Rabbi Elazar holds when he says, I'm Mavato my Rishus, it means he's renouncing both his courtyard and his house. Rabbanan hold, if he says he's just being Mavato his Rishus, his jurisdiction, his domain, he means just his chotzer, not his house. But there's no machlokas that if he specifies that it goes by what he specifies. Therefore, if he specifies Mavato both his chotzer and his house, Im Rabban agreed includes his house. If it specifies only his chotzer, Im Rabbi Elazar agrees it's only his chotzer. Okay? So it's only in the case where he didn't specify.
So what if he goes to trouble with the hotel?
Nobody's been about to hold their rishus in a hotel.
Well, no, but the chotzer essentially, they don't own the halls and stuff like this. It's like...
What do you mean by trouble? Define trouble. Who has trouble? Of course you're allowed to carry in a hotel. That's carrying an hotel because everything belongs to the hotelier, to the owner of the hotel, the management.
People told me, oh, you have to buy...
Nonsense.
You have to buy lease it on Shabbos.
They didn't read the contemporary Eruv.
Oh, okay. So, I don't understand, because this says you don't have to do that.
Right. But this is different. No, but you can't, this is not comparable.
Well, it's a chotzer.
Yeah, but there's only, if somebody said explicitly, they're mevatel, they're rishus.
Well, they don't know.
Oh, because you said, I see, because you said, we said because they become like guests. You're pointing at the guest issue.
They're not even,
right.
In the first place.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that this guest thing is comparable to hotel, in fairness to the people who told you otherwise. Because here, the fact that he becomes a guest, he hasn't paid any rent even. Right. By a hotel, you've paid for your room. That's still rental in halacha.
Right, but you don't pay for the hall, you don't pay for the stairs.
Right, but your room might then be considered separate from everything else. You've in essence, by renting your room, divorced yourself from the rest of the property.
Oh, were they saying...
That's what they would say.
But here they're saying you can carry in the house, but you can't carry back into your house.
Yeah, you can carry for you being the house owner. Umevator Yerushus. According to Rabbanan, you can even carry back into your house, but that's because you're a total guest. You have absolutely no claims to this area. But in a hotel, the fact that you rented out your room means it's a different reshus than the reshus of the rest of the hotel. So therefore, were it to be just an issue of whether you own something or not, that would be a problem. But in a hotel, you're allowed to carry because they really retain the rights to your room in that they own the furniture they're in and they can move you from room to room at will. So that's different.
If you give up your claim to the function, you couldn't carry.
That's correct. No, that's what Rabbanan is saying. We pass like Rabbanan, you have to explicitly renounce your claim to the house in order for it to work. Okay, you can't just you might give up your chutzner and not your house. That's why it's a two-stage affair. Okay, Hajulach Perakoisim Basim. Next parak. Bakom Arvin and Mishtati, you can make an eruv. Oh, sorry, I didn't. V'chein shmai men shyotim ha'krabnin basically yoti with mora yimod d'chiyuv mora b'zakrabnin having something meimar ba'krabnin. Now we thought it says in the Mishnah that he was motzo. He looked for a chaver to agree with Rabbi Eliezer on all three accounts. Who agreed with Rabbi Eliezer, and he couldn't find any. So we thought that it was only on the last account that he couldn't find the chaver. Ashkach Tani Akulun. So they found the Bible that says that in none of the three opinions expressed Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah did anybody agree with him. In other words, he was an isolated opinion in all three things that he stated. Nobody agreed with him on anything he said. Okay? It's Rabbi Eliezer's lot in life. Now, let's try again. Says the Mishnah, you can make an eruv or a shituf. Now, the Gemara, initially we could understand eruv as being eruv chatzeros, but in other words, participating in the courtyard. But in fact, the Gemara will say, as the Korbaneda points out, it's eruv tchumen. Here talk about the eruv tchumen, 2,000 amos. Okay. With the exception of water and salt. Everything can be bought with meiser sheni money when you bring it up to Yerushalmi, except for water and salt. And somebody who takes a vow not to have mazon, foodstuffs, but to remind milk, he's allowed to use everything. He's allowed to use water and salt, not allowed to use anything else. Ma'arvin l'nozir b'yain, one is allowed to make an eruv for a nazir with wine. Why? The Gemara will say why. Yisrael, we're allowed to make a eruv for Yisrael with truma. Sumcha soimer, no. The next word is a typo. In the Mishnah Bavli, it does not appear. Sumcha soimer b'chulin. By the way, there are slight variations time to time between the Mishnayos and the Bavli and Mishnayos and the Yerushalmi. Yeah.
Where they switch Beishamai to Sills.
Right, we have that already. That's right. Rabbi Omer, I'm sorry. Someone's Omer b'chulin. The Kohen bebeis hapras. One can make an eruv for a Kohen even in a field which is questionable, and that there might be a grave there which is not identified. One which is plowed under. You can still make an eruv to the Kohen there, an eruv tchumen. Rabbi Omer afilu beis hakvoros, even in a graveyard proper, a cemetery. Between the graves, because the ways in which a Kohen can enter a cemetery, such as if you bring him in a wagon or a box, so there's a separation between himself and the cemetery. So in that situation, he can go in. So therefore, you can put an eruv tchumen for him in the cemetery proper. Rabbi Yaakov said to Rabbi Eliezer, our Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer. What does Rabbi Eliezer say? The Tzina we learned Talmud over there. With everything you can make an eruv or a shituf. Chutz min hamayim u'min hamelach, except for water and salt. Divi Rabbi Eliezer. Now, later on it says, although it's not mentioned here, Reb Chaim Kanievsky puts it in, Rabbi Yeshua Omer ein ma'arvin. Rabbi Yeshua says you can't make an eruv. Can't. So now, how is our Mishnah going like Rabbi Eliezer? It means that over there, where it says that you ein ma'arvin, it means you can't make a ruve chatzei. There it says b'chol ma'arvin shad mechutz mayim melech divrei Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua Omer ein ma'arvin. Sure, it says you can't make an eruv. So there, 1 second. Well, Lamar's going to explain. Rabbi, so there, our mission for that sounds like our mission going to Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Yisrael said Divrei Akoli. Our mission could even going like Rabbi Yoshua. Really can be going even like Rabbi Yoshua. How so? I'll tell you. But ma'arvim b'chatzeros u'mishtatfim bein b'chatzeros b'metchumin. That which Rabbi Yeshua said, ein ma'arvin, he meant including Erev Chatzeros. But our Mishnah is only talking about Erev Tchumen. In other words, Rabbi Yeshua later on is going to say on Daf Pei. Well, actually, it's later on in the it's Bavli. It's in the Bavli and Daf Pei, now later on the Yerushalmi. But I don't know, maybe it's in the Yerushalmi later also. But what Rabbi Yeshua says, yeah, it is later on. Yeah, it's later on the Yerushalmi too. I guess it's a Mishnah. That which Rabbi Yeshua says, Ein Ma'arvin is specifically going on Erev Chatzeros. For Erev Chatzeros, you need specifically bread. The reason that Reb Chaim Kanievsky explains very nicely, he says that for Erev Chatzeros, you need far more of a linkage, a bond between those who participate in it than by Erev Shitubei Mavos. Because Erev Chatzeros is meant to link houses. Houses are separate domiciles. To link them, you need a very strong bond. What kind of bond? What forges a bond? Bread, mamish asuda. In Erev Shitufei Mavos only links Chatzeros. Chatzeros in and of themselves are not such, separate entities, right? So therefore, when we say that to link Chatzeros, all you need is to have some type of foodstuff, even if it's not bread. So he says that again. That which Rabbi Yossi says Divrei Akoli, it's because our Mishnah is later on where Rabbi Yeshua forbids using anything other than bread. He's talking about Erev Chatzeros. Our Mishnah is talking where it allows the use of things other than bread. It's talking about Erev Tchumen. Okay? That later on where it says Ein Ma'arvin is talking about Erev Chatzeros. But that which our Mishnah permits it, our Mishnah is talking about Erev Tchumen, not about Erev Chatzeros. Okay, Masnisa D'Rei Meir. Or furthermore, our Mishnah is going like Rabbi Meir. The Tani we learned. Now here's also something missing here. Lieberman puts in here the words the Tani B'Kol Ma'arvin V'Chulei Divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is the one who says B'Kol Ma'arvin. Okay, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is a different change of gear. So later on, no matter what, you have to change something either at the beginning of the next this passage or at the end of the passage. There's something missing. So let's do like Lieberman. Masnisa D'Rei Meir again. The Tani in here puts in B'Kol Ma'arvin Chulei Divrei Rabbi Meir. Now the brisa goes on. Kol davar shunechal kamoshu, shunechal chai kamoshu. Anything which is eaten raw by itself. Okay, in other words, it can be eaten as an independent entity, of course, cooked or raw, but even raw by itself, ma'arvin bo. You can use it to make an erev tchumen. Ima pas, if it's something which can only be eaten with bread. In other words, it's a condiment, not a food. So ein ma'arvin bo. We can't use it to make an erev. Hashum ba'betzolim. According to what about onions and garlic? According to Rabbi Meir, who said kol davar shenechal kamoshu chai. Ein ma'arvin bo. You can't use them. Why? Because they're not eaten raw. You don't eat raw onion and garlic. Now, were you to cook them, you can use them for erev tchumen. But when they're raw, since they're not normally eaten raw, you can't use them to make erev tchumen. Okay, is that clear? So this is all Rabbi Meir. This whole brisa is Rabbi Meir. First, he said again, according to Lieberman's change, you can use anything to make an erev. Then he qualified. He says it's got to be something which you can eat raw, not a condiment. And therefore, if you have raw onions and raw garlic, which you can't eat raw unless you eat them as a condiment, you can eat them. You can put a piece of garlic on your bread, right? You have garlic bread, but you don't eat it raw. So therefore, in that case, you can't use it for erev tchumen. Okay? The Tani Rabbi Yehuda, as we learned on Maisa, Rabbi Yehuda said, Rabbi Yehuda told over a Maisa Sheshavas Meir Ardak Sam. You spent Shabbos in the town of Ardak Sam. The person came and said, I made an erev tchumen to get to you to visit you, Rebbe, with onions. So Shiva Meir Dalet Amos. Meir said, you can't leave my Dalet Amos. Why is that? Because he came b'chutz tchum. Because the Erev Tchum was not valid. And once you come b'chutz tchum, you can't go more than 4 amos. So therefore he was stuck next to Rameir all of Shabbos. Okay? Afagav. Because even though the Rameir B'kol Ma'arvim B'shtatfim, you can use anything to make an Erev. Chutz min ha'mayim, min ha'melech, except for water and salt. Uva'adov shunecha k'mo shu chai. Has to be something which can be, the shunecha chai k'mo shu is something which can be eaten raw, as is, not that it serves as a condiment or accompaniment to bread. Okay? Haluf va'kulkus. Kulkas. Now, luf and kulkas, al daita the rabbanan a me'arvim b'hem. According to the rabbis, you can't use them as an Erev. Now, I'm not sure what rabbanan means. It should be Rabbi Meir. So I assume it means, according to the rabbis, which we just mentioned. But Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. But the bottom line is, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Meir, you can't use it either because they're not eaten raw by themselves, or because they're only used as condiments. Whatever the case may be, the bottom line is, luf and kulkus, they cannot be used as an Erev. Okay, I don't know what these things are. I don't know.
Tomatoes describes them as they don't really grow in the ground.
Yeah, but that's the Gillian Ashar says he's clearly incorrect about that. Yeah, says that's only Khmein and Petrios, not luf and kulkus. Okay. Says Gemara Tanina, train clothing, we learned 2 general principles, lo dami and chad l'chad, they're not similar to each other. Now here we really have to see the Korban Eidah because the Gerus of the Gemara is messed up. You take a look, the Korban Eidah is where it says, there's a little asterisk. The 4th citation down in Mesuras or Shas has a little asterisk, and it's right opposite there, 1 line above that in the Korban Eidah. You see that, Mr. Zuger? The Hey Gimel, 1 line above that? Stands for Achi Garcina. You got it?
I have the asterisk, and I'm right above it. Oh, the Hey Gimel.
Right. Okay. Achi Garcina, Makoma Avinu Mishtatfim. You can use anything for an Erev or for a Shituf. Again, Erev meaning Erev Tchumen. Or for Shituf Evos. Chutz mean it should be Hamayim min Hamelech. Except for it was water and salt. Uvad Davar Shud Nechal Kol Chai Kamoshu, as long as beaten as is. V'akol nilkach bekes of meiser, everything can be acquired from meiser sheni money in Yerushalayim, chutzin hamayim u'namelech, except for water and salt. But here's the kula. Here's the difference. Bein b'davar she'nechal chai k'moshu, bein b'davar she'eno nechal chai k'moshu. But even if it can't be eaten raw, of course, it's an obvious difference. It's a rational difference. But the Yerushalmi is just pointing out the difference. To make Erev Tchumen, you can't use raw onions or raw garlic. Why? Because they're not edible as is. You have to cook them, right? But to buy the Meiser Sheni money, edible food in Yerushalayim with Meiser Sheni money, you can buy raw onions and garlic. Because what do you do with them afterwards? You cook them. So to use them as Erev Tchumen as is, you cannot. To buy them, you can. Very simple. Okay?
Does it have to do with whether it can be eaten or just people don't usually eat them?
No, people usually don't. Because some people, I forget who it is. One of the Mepharshim here. I think Reb Chaim Kanievsky saw it. He says that we do find onions eaten raw. But since, but even though they can be eaten raw, since the derech is not normally to eat them raw, so therefore you can't. It's not. That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even though it's edible, it has to be derech to eat it raw, and people don't eat raw onions b'derech. Okay? Unless, again, they accompany it with bread.
This goes back to Byron's sock on, I was in the shit about, what's the rough on raw carrots?
Yeah.
He said people don't usually eat raw carrots.
Right. Shackle.
That's what he
That's what he said, shackle, right. Okay. Says the Gemara. Now we're up to where it says bakol with the quotation mark next to it. You see that bakol? It's the last word in the line, about 6 lines down from where we went to the Korban Eidah. Bakol ma'avin u'mishtatfin, you can make a native or sheet of anything chutz min hamelach, chutz min hamayim min hamelach, except for salt and water and salt, as we mentioned a few moments ago. Bein Rabbi Akiva, Bein Rabbi Shmuel, that's true both according to Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, whose opinions we'll see presently. V'akol nilkach bekesef meiser, you can buy anything with meiser sheni money, chutz min hamayim min hamelach, Rabbi Akiva. That's Rabbi Akiva's opinion as well. Biram, however, Rabbi Shmuel, not like Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, Tani Rabbi Shmuel. How so? Well, Rabbi Shmuel said. Tani Rabbi Shmuel says, "Nasata kesef b'chol asher ta'ave nafshecha." You should give the money when you bring Ma'aser Sheni money up to Yerushalayim. You should give it, meaning you should purchase with it anything your heart desires. I raise the cloud. This is a general principle. Babokar b'tzon v'yayin v'sheichar, cattle, sheep, wine, beer. I raise a prat. That's a specification. Anything your heart desires, I raise a cloud. Acher. That's another generalization. Cloud prat to cloud. Generalization, a specification, and generalization. So it's got to be something like, has to be similar to the specification. Wilmar, to teach you. Ma prat mefurish davashu vlad vlados oretz. The prat is something which is born. And born of the ground, meaning born if it's an animal, or born of the ground if it's a fruit or vegetable. As ainly eladavershu vlad vlados oretz, has to be something which is either born or born of the ground. Well, that exclude besides water and salt, we'll see in a minute. Rabbi Akiva mefarish. Rabbi Akiva explains differently. Ma prat mefurishu pri. The specification is a fruit, or vlad pri, or something which is the derived from a fruit, that such as a calf, which is derived from another edible from a cow. Umachshire pri, and something which it can serve as a condiment for another fruit. So manav, that all those things, af ainli elodovershu pri, a fruit, vlad pri, the derivation of a fruit, umachshire pri, or something which is a condiment for another fruit. Manafim, what's between the two opinions? Dogim v'chagovim, fish, grasshoppers, kmeim upitrios, mushrooms and truffles. Why? Because dogim and chagovim are not created. They're not from the land. They're not from the land. As the Gemara Chulin, the Gemara Chulin says that fish are created from the animals are created from the land. Fish are created from the sea, and chagovim are created from the from marshland, right? So Gemara on Chulin somewhere. I think the round Daf Zayin. Marshland. So therefore, what?
What is created from marshlands?
Grasshoppers.
Oh, grasshoppers.
Rekik nivru. So he says that these are not things which come from the ground. So since they don't come from the ground, so therefore, according to Rabbi Shmuel, they're precluded. So to Kmeina Pitrios, they don't come from the ground. They weren't created from the ground. So therefore, they're precluded. Okay, so all these things. So the only thing Vlad. I say I made a mistake now. I realize retroactively. When it says Vlad and Vladosaurus, Vlad means something which gave birth, but it has to be also Vladosaurus. It has to be something which originally came from the ground. So meaning that, of course, all grains and vegetables and all that come from the ground. So do cows, cattle, any sheep, any animal, but not fish, grasshoppers, or locusts. Actually, grasshoppers are trade. Fish, locusts, or mushrooms and truffles, because none of that comes from the ground. They don't come from the ground. No, they're spores. Okay. So according to Rabbi Akiva, according to Rabbi Akiva, they can still be from Meiser, right? Because they're machshire pri, right? It's more than that. They're machshir pri means they're condiments, but they're also pri, because he doesn't know that it has to be pri haaretz, right? He said pri, vlad pri, machshir pri. He never said pri haaretz. So therefore, anything which is a pri can be used. Anything which is a fruit can be used for use. Water is not a fruit. Salt is not a fruit. But anything else is a fruit. So therefore, anything else which is a fruit, you can use, you can buy with kesem meiser sheni money. Okay? So Rabbi Akiva nilkachim kesem meiser, Rabbi Shmuel ain't nilkachim. Period.
What decided it's a fruit? Is that a special thing by meiser? It has nothing to do with what you normally consider fruit.
Fruit or food?
Well, it says before. Food. No, take it back.
This is a special look on fruit.
Right.
Food we're going to come to later on. On your test, we're going to discuss food. The issue of food itself. Meantime, we're saying Meiser Sheni's got to be pre. Okay, question was pre or alright, so just pre in and of itself. Okay?
So it's a separate notion of pre for my...
Right, it's expanded concept of fruit. Fruit normally means fruit.
Right.
But here fruit means an offspring, any type of offspring. Which has to be offspring of the land or just plain offspring of something else. Okay? Water and salt are not offsprings. Right? They are in and of themselves. Minerals or whatever you call it. Bakom Arvin Mishtad, we use anything for Erev of Rashituf. Chutzina Mayim Melech, Rabbi Yisrael Fisher, Ein Aguf Nizam Vam. So he gives a different shot that we said before, because they're not nourishing, they don't provide nourishment. Rabbi Levi Shemin Kloli, because they have to do with curses. The water with the mabul and the salt with Sodom and Gomorrah. Right? So therefore, we don't use it by using Meiser Shem because they are accursed. Rabbi Elazar said, however, this is a very big difference. That's only if it's water by itself or salt by itself. A son may melech, however, if you made it into salt water and you'll koch and mikras and meiser, then you buy it in meiser shem money. Oh, it's a whole different ballgame. Why is that? Because now it's a condiment. It's not water or salt. It's salt water. It's a condiment. You can buy it with meiser shem money. And although the implication is that you can also make an eruv with it. It's not explicit here, but the implication is to make an eruv with it. Eruv tchumen. Why? Because, again, we don't pass them like Rameir. Rameir says you can't use condiments to make eruv tchumen. Right? He says it has to be not so, which is malafis is a pas. But he says this proprietor holds, Rabbi Elazar argues, and he holds that even malafis is a pas, even a condiment such as salt water can be used to make an eruv. Rabbi Yehoshua said, no, it's only if you put oil into it. Then it's a foodstuff. If it's salt, water, and oil together, it's a foodstuff. Otherwise, it's not a foodstuff. Rabbi Yossi asks, if that's the case, so that's the case, shouldn't be allowed to make an eruv tchum with him, tchumen with the salt water, unless there's oil in it, the proper shiur of oil. Now, the proper shiur of oil is significant. How much, in order to make an eruv tchumen, how much water do you need? Salt water, do you need enough water to salt water for 2 meals? How much salt water do you need to use in 2 meals? Minuscule amount. 2 teaspoons, let's say. But the size of oil which you need is significantly more, because oil was a big staple in the old days. So you used to use a lot of oil for their meals, right? For dressing, for dipping, for all sorts of things. So says the Gemara, if you're going to say that only if the salt and water also have oil in them, maybe they're used to make eruv tchumen, so you should require, in order to make an eruv tchumen with salt, water plus oil, the amount of oil which is required for eruv tchumen, which is much, much more. Right? You see that would be a very big chumrah, right? Rabbi Yossi boy mi'ato lo ya'ariv el lefi cheshbon shaboy. Shouldn't be allowed to make an eruv tchumen if it meets the proper cheshbon of oil. Tama Tanina, we learned over there that shiur is significantly larger. Chatzi lug yain. In order to make an eruv with oil, you need to have half a lug of wine. Rabbi Kiva Meravius, or Rabbi Kiva says a quarter of a lug. Now that doesn't concern us. What concerns the end of the brayso, which of course the Yerushalmi doesn't bring down, which the Carbon brings down right opposite this line in the Gemara. Rabbi Kiva to Tanam B'Sefer Revi'is Shem and Rabbi Kiva Omer Shminis, that to make an eruv tchumen with oil, you need to have a quarter of a lug, a revi'is of shemen, Tanakama, that's 3.3 ounces according to Reb Chaim Noah, 4.1 according to Chazon Ish, or according to Kiva, Shminis half of that, but that's still much more than the salt water you need, right? It's at least an ounce, right? And an ounce or 2, right? So therefore it's much more. So it's much more than a couple of teaspoons of salt water I would need. So says the Gemara, Rabbi China, no. That's true by wine, but not by oil. That was an interesting concept, what that means. The way the Carbonate explains it, what it means is that where it said there that that's the shiur of oil, of wine, when it says the rechein le'eruv, right? It says chatzi log yain Rabbi Kiva Revi'is Rabbi Elazar rechein le'eruv. That's only going on wine. Because what are we extrapolating from? Where do we get the shiur from wine? We pulled it out of a hat. That's the shiur from matnos aniyim. If an ani comes to you and says, I want a meiser ani, I want to have the poor man's tithe every third and sixth year. So this is the amount you have to give him. You have to give him a significant amount. This is the amount you have to give him. So by wine, it says you have to give him either a revius or a chatzi luk, either 3.3 ounces or 6.6 ounces. So that we say is the same shiur by Eruv, because a person normally uses by Eruv the same amount of wine, which is going to use, which is significant to give to an ani, right? We give an ani for 1 or 2 meals, so to use for Erev Tchum for 1 or 2 meals. But for oil, we're making you give the ani something choshev. But it's more than you actually use at a meal. More than you actually use even at 2 meals. Because if we made you give to ani the amount of oil, which is the minimum amount of oil used at a meal, it would be degraded for the ani, for the poor person. It'd be a very small amount. So therefore, that which it says v'chein le'eruv, yes, that's true about wine. Because wine, what you give is very similar to what you would use for your meals. But when it says by oil, but the shiur gives by oil that you have to give by an ani, that's not the same shiur by Eruv, because actually what you're giving the ani exceeds that you would use by a meal, and therefore for Erev Tchum you need less. Okay? Says the Gemara, Ma'arvin mozen shtei sudos. We learned that you take the in order to make it Erev, you make the food, take the food for 2 meals. Tani ma'arvin b'chometz mozen shtei sudos. So you don't need actually the food for 2 meals. You need, let's say, if you're going to use vinegar, use the amount of vinegar which you would have used for your food for 2 meals. So as we mentioned, far less. And Tani, we also learned ma'arvin b'shemen mozen shtei sudos. You don't have to give the same amount of oil which you would give to a poor person as meiser ani. You just give whatever you'd use in 2 meals. Rabbi and Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yitzchak said, "Kedei litbol." How much is that? Enough to dip yerek, and it should be instead of hanegad, which means bundled, hanechal, mozen shtei sudos. The amount of oil used to give, in other words, salad dressing for 2 meals. So it's taka much less, like it's the same 2 teaspoons as you would use for salt water, because salad dressing you use in a meal is not very much. Right? So therefore, even if you're going to normally use oil instead of butter, instead of margarine, but lamaisa, all you have to put out for Erev Tchumen is the amount used for salad for 2 meals, which is very similar in size to the amount of salt water you would need. Lamaisa, we paskin, all you need is salt water without the oil. You don't have to have the oil in the salt water, I think. But I take that back. I don't know Loch Lamaisa. I don't remember Loch Lamaisa. If you ever have to make Erev Tchumen and use salt water, ask me. Okay? Says my brother, Rabbi Yitzchak Atushia, Rabbi Yitzchak from the city of Atush, it says the Lieberman says it's Akko, somehow Akko and Atosh are the same city. Amar Kun Rabbi Zira said name Rabbi Zira Mishum the base Rabbi Yanai name Has Rabbi Yanai Afunim Chaim, live beans or live peas, raw peas, the best translation. You can use in order to make marvin, you can use in order to make Erev. Isn't that Poshet? No, it's not Poshet. According to whom do we have to stress this? Rabbi Meir, according to Rabbi Meir. Shlotam Raholavein Masuichan Sapeh, they give your mouth a bad odor. I might say, so they're not considered to be suitable to eat raw. So therefore we say, since people do eat them raw, even though they give your mouth a bad odor, you can use it to make Erev Tchumen. Dag Moliach, herring, salted fish, Marimok used to make an Erev. Basar Moliach, salted meat, Marimok used it. Basar Chai, what about raw meat? Marvin Bosek used it as well to make an Erev Tetzia, because we learned there's some people who do eat it. Habavlim Ochlin also, it's the Shu Chai. It says in Masechta Yuma, so that the Babylonians would eat the korbanos of Yom Kippur. Right after Yom Kippur was over, the Babylonian Kohanim would eat them. Right after Yom Kippur was over, in order that that food should not go to waste, and they wouldn't wait till it was cooked. They would eat it raw. Steak tartare. Okay? So that's the case. We see that even raw meat, somebody can eat it. So since that is the case, you can use raw meat in order to make korban pei, in order to make an Erev Tchumen. No, on the contrary. If you eat raw meat, then you don't have a problem with the blood unless it's squeezed out. the reason why we require melicha, it's a very complicated thing. The reason why we require melicha on our meat, salting our meat, is even though we hold that cooked blood is only the Rabbanan, but Rabbanan aser cooked blood but to eat. And cooked blood, why is that? When you cook the blood, so the blood moves. It comes out of the piece and spreads out within the dish. That's also blood, which is not. However, if you eat raw meat, and the blood is not separate in the vein, but rather absorbed in the meat, there's no isser in that. Because be dam shapiresh in order to be also. Okay, so dam shapiresh is also the raisa. Raw blood shapiresh is also the raisa. Cooked blood shapiresh, which separated from the meat, is only also the rabbanon. But because of that, rabbanon asked to all meat unless it's salted first. Okay. Says the Gemara, because they were not sensitive to the nicety of eating cooked meat. Rabbanan has kalbuda, a type of vegetable. We don't eat it raw, but the Kutians ate it raw. Ma'arvin can use it to make an eruv. Shmuel bar Shilas b'shem Rav said, I don't know if it's a statement or a question, I guess it was a statement. He stated, since they eat it raw, you can even make it an eruv. Shmuel bar Shilas b'shem Rav said, papuin and gargonios and challah, glugos, various different types of fruit, Ma'arvin, you can make an eruv with them. Bon kume, they asked, what are these things? They said, and even though they're usually cooked, since people eat them raw, you can use them to make an eruv. Okay. New issue. Somebody takes a vow not to have any nourishment. Mutter mayim milk is allowed to have salt and water. Okay? Because they're not nourishing. Tamati, we learned over there, I have a question. It says over there, in Masechta Nedarim, somebody takes an oath not to have any benefit from that which is cooked. Mutter b'tzli v'sholuk. He's allowed to have roast and overcooked. Sholuk is like overcooked, like something which is cooked much more than a normal amount. Masnisa Amar, I have a question about this. I have a Mishnah which teaches us who was cooking the shlamim, shokar, or overcook them. So we see that. Well, actually, we see that. No. It's the same thing, because it says that the Kohen gets the portion when the Nazir brings a carbon. He brings a ram, and they cook the ram. And it says that he has to take the portion of the ram, min azra b'shela. Most karbanos, the Kohen gets the portion, the chazan and shok, when it's raw. By the Nazir, by the ram brought by Nazir, he gets it after it's cooked. So it says there that he takes it either after it's bosh mevushal or after it's shaluk, after it's cooked or after it's overcooked. So you see that overcooked is also called cooked, because you can take it after it's overcooked, right? So we see that overcooked and cooked are the same thing, right? That's what the Gemara wants to bring from this brisa. Furthermore, V'karya Omar, V'paz tells us, Shatzoli korim mevushal, that which is roasted is called cooked as well. It says in Boesh, they cook the Pesach in the fire. How do you cook corn Pesach? You must roast it, right? So therefore we see that roasted is called cooked. And if you're going to say Shalok Haloche, maybe say that there where they cooked corn Pesach was improper, they did something wrong. It's not true. Rabbi Yonah Botzraya Omar, Rabbi Yonah from Basra said, Kamishpat, it says that Pesach Kamishpat. They cooked it right. So it means that they cooked it kedin. That means that roasting is called cooking. Furthermore, Masnisa Shoshol Korim Mevusha, Vakari Amar Shatzoli Korim Mevusha. If that's the case, I have a Mishnah which says that which is overcooked is called cooked. And I have a Pas which says that which is roasted is called cooked. So how can you say how can you say if someone takes a vow not to have something cooked is allowed to have that which is roasted or overcooked? We see that roasted and overcooked are both called cooked, so it should be awesome. Rabbi Yochanan says one answer. By Nedarim they went after people's way of speaking. In other words, in the Torah, Sholuk and Mavushal are equivalent. Vis-a-vis the halacha of the Kohen taking from the ram of the Nazir. In the Mishnah, Tzoli, roasted. In the Pasuk, Tzoli and Mavushal are considered to be the same as it says by the Korban Pesach. However, people themselves don't call that which is roasted or overcooked cooked. And therefore, by a vow, by a nether, we go after what people how people express themselves. And therefore, he did not intend to forbid himself to have overcooked or roasted food. Now, Rabbi Yosef gives a different answer. The Torah itself never says that Sholuk is Mavushal. Rabbana came and said you should know that Sholuk is tantamount to Mavushal. But it's not the Torah itself which ever said it. And the Torah never said that roasted is Mavushal. It's a pasuk in Divrei Hayomim, not in the Torah itself. So therefore, when a person says that he's answering himself in that which is Mavushal, it does not include, according to the strict letter of the Torah itself, that which is overcooked or that which is roasted. What's the difference if we follow the language of the Torah, the language of the Chachamim, language of Bnei I'm sorry. Person said, I'm not going to drink wine on Chag. Chag meaning Sukkot. Al daite the Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, also beyond the Vachon, he can't have wine on Simchas Torah, right? Big bummer, right? Why can't he have wine on Simchas Torah? Because according to people called Simchas Torah Sukkot. Al daite the Rabbi Yeshua mutter. Rabbi Yeshua is allowed to have wine on Simchas Torah. Why? Because in the Torah itself, Simchas Torah Shmini Atzeres is called a rego b'ifnei atzma yotav in itself. It's not part of Sukkot. Says Gemara, you know what? Of Rabbi Yeshua Moldeshua, so even Rabbi Yeshua could see that he's also to have wine on Shmini Atzeres. Why is that? Because lo amar Rabbi Yeshua l'chumra. Rabbi Yeshua only came to be machmir, not to be mekel. He said we go after lashon b'nei adam, language people speak. But where it's going to be an added chumra, we also follow the lashon, the language of the Torah itself. Okay? Says Gemara further. Rabbi Chia Barba, Rabbi Yochanan achal chalitin. Rabbi Chia Barba said Rabbi Yochanan ate fruit. Chalitin is a type of fruit. Vame said lo ta'amis midei ba'u yoma. And when I ate fruit, even though I ate it the entire day, I didn't taste anything. What does that mean? It means pashtus. It means, says the Gemara. The Gemara means wasn't nourishing. Nourishment means flour. Meat, not fruit. Yet, we learned that noidim in a Muslim, somebody who takes a vow not to have anything nourishing, he's only allowed to have water and salt. Why not fruit? If fruit is not nourishing, he's allowed to have fruit as well. Part our law, so we answer like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua, Amar Hochman Adar Machalosh to Rabbi Yeshua says we always follow the language of the Torah in determining what a neder extends to when that will present the chumrah. And here, how do we know that in the Torah itself everything is called mazon, even fruit? Why? Because Rabbi Achabe, Rabbi Amar, it says ve'etzer asonos, they took 10 donkeys, nosos laden with bar, the lechem umazon, carrying grain and bread and muzzle. So matam ulomar muzzle. Bread is muzzle. Why is muzzle separate here? And when we can't call Dvarim Kriyim muzzle, from here to deduce that everything is called muzzle, meaning that even stuff which is not a staple, like bread or meat or anything like that, is also called muzzle in the Torah itself. It's called muzzle by Torah itself. So that's why if you take a vow not to have mazon, it also includes fruits. Another min kikar. The person took an oath not to derive any benefit from a piece of bread. Marvin bo, he can still make an erev with it. Hikdisho aim marvin bo. However, he made hektish, he can't make an erev with it. Why? Another min kikar marvin bo. If he made the erev with it, he can still. If he made a neder to refrain from it, he still can use it. Shekain roy lochlo, the shinun is closed in the bottom throws the word acher. Somebody else can eat it. You don't have to be able to eat Erev Tchumen. Somebody does. Somebody else can eat it. That suffices. Hikdisho ein marvin bo. If you made a hektish, you can't use it to make an eruv. Shlohu v'lo acharuin lochlo, because now nobody can eat it. Even though hypothetically it can be matir neder, the Yerushalmi doesn't take that into account. Once you made a hektish, right now nobody can eat it, so therefore you can't use it for eruv tchumen. Rabbi Yacha boy, Rabbi Yacha said, I don't understand this. Can't you be matir or neder on hektish? Anybody can eat it if you're matir or neder. It's a very good question. Such a good question, Yerushalmi doesn't answer it. Goes on to the next issue. Rabbi Yacha Amar Mesha boy. Rabbi Yacha said, Rabbi Mesha asked a very good question. Tam Rabbi Shimon Chia Breda Rav Omar Shimon Chia the name Rav said, Avodah Zorah Shasah Lechi L'Maviv. You took an Avodah Zorah, let's say a piece of an Asherah tree, which is supposed to be burnt, and you made a lechi, a post at the front of your mavli. Mater says a mavli. You're allowed. That's okay in carrying the mavli. It's considered to be a lechi. Here we said, although I don't know where we said explicitly, but I guess it's alluded to. If you took bread of Avodah Zorah, you can't make an eruv tchumen with it. Why not? What's the difference? Why can you make it into a lechi if you can't make an eruv tchumen? So Yerushalmi says a very beautiful and simple answer. Even you take an asherah tree and make it your lechi, the bottom line is your mavli is closed off. You need to have a symbolic closure on the fourth side. You got it. But here, if you can't eat it, you have nothing. Right? There's nothing to eat. And the way the Achronim explain, I think Reb Chaim says it, says kitute mechtat shiur. What does Avodah Zorah mean? It means it's as if it's burnt. But even if it's burnt, it has substance. It could serve as a wall. But if it's burnt, it can't serve as a foodstuff. So therefore, it can't be considered to be your eruv tchumen. Marvel nazir b'yayin, when it's allowed to make a nazir for wine, eruv for a nazir for wine, shkein achar roy l'shtosa, because somebody else can drink it. Again, he himself has to have to drink it. Yisrael b'truma, shkein kohen roy l'achar, because a kohen can eat truma. And the next passage here is very problematic, so we'll stop here for today.